I'm just phoning it in from the couch today.
Right. Let's get this baby going.
John, I don't think you need any more help with like the admin, so I'm just leaving it all to you, right? On the stringer.
Always need your help, Spencer. There,
right?
So 3, 2, 1. Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic Roundtable Show. We do this every Friday around 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Got some great stories. Got some great panelists. We have a special guest returning, a friend of the show, Brian Jackson, joint founder and CEO of Forge Media, the people behind WP Coupon, Nova Share, and Prometheus. I'm not a little
Perf Matters.
Perf Matters, sorry, Brian. All great plugins. Former head of marketing at Kinster. So I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves. Let's start with Uncle Spencer. Spencer, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, Spence from WPLunchify.com.
That's great. And we've got Heather. Heather, would you like to?
I am Heather Renzi from The Difference, and I am author of Birth of a Unicorn.
Yeah, that's true. I've got Sally. Got Sally joining us. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Sally Getch, the WP Fangirl from WPFangirl.com.
And we got our guest, Brian. Brian, would you like to introduce yourself?
So I'm Brian Jackson, co-founder at Forge Media. And we develop a couple WordPress plugins, and we do a little content marketing as well.
Yep, he's very talented. So before we go into our main stories, I want to talk about my major sponsor, Custos Purity. There we go. If you're looking to get involved in podcasting for yourself or for your clients, you need somewhere to host your audio files. And basically, Costas, I was with another provider. I wasn't totally happy with them. I moved to them, started talking to them. They decided that they wanted to sponsor the show. That's fantastic. I've been delighted with their service. It's just been great people to work with. Really slick interface design, about half the price of the people that I was with. I can't say more about them. So if that's interesting, I suggest you go over there if you want to start your own podcast or you're helping somebody start theirs because you need the right platform. So let's go into the first story. Theme set up for our paradigm shift. WordPress 5.8 will unleash tools and make it happen. What did you think of this one, Brian?
I'm actually really excited with the full site editing stuff because I think in my opinion, I think it's what page builders should have been from the very beginning with WordPress. And so it's just going to be interesting to see where all this stuff goes. Most people know I'm a big fan of GeneratePress, and they're launching this new hybrid full site editing thing to kind of what WordPress is doing here as well. So I think with WordPress core is still a little too soon to really do everything you really need. So I think a lot of people are still going to be using, Elementor or Divi or going with like a framework like GeneratePress or Astra or something. I think they're still going to be doing that for a while because I don't think the full site editing in WordPress is kind of up to where it should be yet. But it's actually something I'm really excited about. I'm going to keep testing it when they keep pushing out updates. And maybe, a year or two from now, maybe I'll be designing my whole sites in just WordPress core. Like that would be actually kind of cool, I think. So,
yeah. What about you, Sally? What do you think?
I'm really curious to see this. I'm definitely looking forward to the query block. And it's a pity that some of the other stuff is not going to make it in because I think global styles are a really important thing to have. It's like, on the one hand, it's nice that you can customize every block individually. On the other hand, you really don't want to have to go through and customize every block individually. So I really look forward to that being there. It's interesting. I'm listening to part of the podcast interview that's referenced in this article. I have not had a chance to play with the full site editing, and I'm curious about this, discussion about, hybrid themes and universal themes, and the encouragement to theme developers that, yes, you may find yourself building things in a different way, but you're not necessarily going to disappear. And the statement that, somebody is poised to make millions. Well, maybe, I don't know. I'm sure all of the theme companies are paying attention, though. And, people like Generate Press are definitely staying on top of that. I'm looking forward to it as somebody who works a lot with themes to seeing what comes up, but it is still, very rough around the edges, and is going to be, and it continues to face an uphill battle in that way, because, what you have to do for the whole of WordPress to take all of those users into consideration is a lot more than what you have to think about to build, Elementor or Beaver Builder or whatever, where you can say, here, this is what you need on your site, and how that works, and we're going to cater to the people who love our stuff and want to be able to do things this way.
All right. So what do you reckon, Spencer?
So, as with everything the tavern, the devil is in the comments. And I think that the two key points that are really relevant is, on the one hand, it's very exciting that for certain types of blogs or personal websites, you could have a drag and drop thing that solves the really complex problem of doing multiple queries to put together a page, right? We've all experienced at some level, like, here's the featured blog posts, and here's the related things, and here's the other author stuff. And that's hard, even with plugins, to just get your head wrapped around. But the future proofing of separating content from style is the dinosaur or the Frankenstein monster that I'm constantly having to help people with, because look at Divi. Still maybe number one or number two most popular themes, but if you have a Divi website and you want to go to change, even though we talked about this years ago, guess what you got to do? You got to go and copy paste out all of the content, because otherwise you have this giant short code nightmare. What's going to happen if somebody in a company allows the editor to be accessible by some junior copywriter, and they go to town making all this stuff with the blocks, and then the company decides in the future they want to change something? Well, that junior copywriter has just created a big mess. Whereas in most of those environments, and Heather, I think, can speak to this best, they definitively separate out the content from the design for that very purpose. So Justin and the other people were suggesting, and I think that's a great example, don't release this thing into the wild until you have some really solid control over who is allowed to use this thing.
So what do you reckon, Heather?
I mean, I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm going to turn off the blocks. I mean, at least they're doing concessions for people like me now, where they're like, oh, well, there's still people that hate this and are going to code. So yeah, I mean, no matter what they do, they're not gonna. There's still the hardcore like people that hate visual stuff, and there are gonna be developers no matter what. So, but I mean, every time they try to like drag, I mean, they keep adding all these things to try and drag people like me in, and we're still gonna be like, no.
Well, those aren't the kinds of things that pull people like you in. So if they keep adding more of the stuff you don't like, it's not going to, it's not going to make it attractive to you.
Yeah. I mean, like it's just but I mean, it's like they're spinning their wheels. They're trying I mean, it's not like I'm not going to use WordPress because I do, but I mean, why are they wasting all their effort?
They have a lack of focus, right? They don't know who they're catering to is essentially the problem. You know, you don't see any other company. Like, for example, look at Salesforce. Salesforce is an enterprise level solution. They don't spend an ounce of time trying to talk to normal people. On the contrary, they're like, you got to pay $2,500 to talk to an expert who's certified best to even understand what we do. Whereas with WordPress, they're trying to be kind of all things to all people at once and not necessarily doing any of them very well.
Yeah, that's true. Let's go on to the next story. The Apple event on April the 20th. Yes, it was spectacular at their corporate space center. It was something out of a science fiction film, wasn't it? So what did you reckon about that, Spencer? What Apple?
I'm very sad about Apple in
so.
general. You guys know Marcus Brownlee, who is like one of the top YouTubers ever of technology, right? And he does a lot of Apple stuff, and his production quality is incredible. He's got, I think, 30 million subscribers. But the point is, he just covered this with a video, and I just caught it through my feed. I was like, oh my God, this stuff is so cool and sexy. And then I reminded myself what's under the hood, which is, everything is locked down. Everything is anti-right to repair. Everything is overpriced, all fluff, no substance. Now, while it is true that for hardcore editors and so forth, there are things about Apple products that are still good, I myself have found that I've been running very nicely with one of those Intel Nooks, you know, this little cigarette-sized box of processor connected to a 43-inch TV, 4K thing I got at Costco for $125. I've been living large, doing everything I want, including video editing, for about $600 a cost. As much as those iMacs are super sexy, and so are the iPads, I'm like hard pressed to figure out why I would get suckered into spending thousands of dollars on a product that is going to essentially cost me double that to fix it if there's ever anything wrong. And I think, like, didn't Brian once say he'll never use WooCommerce? I hesitate to say, but there's very little chance that I will ever buy any Mac computer product in the future unless or until something changes with their right to repair issues.
Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from, and I actually have bought a Mac Mini as the second, and I'm using it right now, and I'm very happy with it. But I do understand everything what you said. Before I throw it over, I'm going to go to Heather in a second. But before it, what kind of really, when I was watching this Tim, and then all the kind of perfect employees of Apple, they're all so chirpy, weren't they? And so also good looking. I could see Heather working at Apple. In front of the camera, being very chirpy, but they're all so perfect, weren't they? Everything was so perfect in the world of Apple, wasn't it? So, Heather, what did you think of their presentation?
I mean, it was a whole big to-do about nothing. I mean, they're stealing stuff from other people again. Like, they're trying to put Tile out of business. They're trying to put Intel out of business.
Direct ripoff, by the way. Like, yeah, they could not have ripped off Tile any more than they did.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, like, the iPhone 12 comes in purple now. I mean, they're just trying to, they're trying to, like, delay the fact, or like wave their hands around the fact that there's a chip shortage worldwide. So like the iPhone 13 is probably going to be delayed. They're trying to get around that. I mean, there's all sorts of things that, I mean, it was just a whole lot of nothing. So I think these big events,
but nobody cares because it's pretty.
Yeah. Ooh, it's in purple.
Purple,
yeah, and the fact that it was what?
It's pretty and it's in purple.
But
yeah,
isn't
I
that 99% of what they're selling? If you look at this homepage or the Mac description, everything they're talking about is like, it's got a color, it's coded matching cable with fabric on it. Or these
yeah.
speakers fill the room with sound.
So
It's
like for
really?
my latest iPhone, like I was trying to buy the case like for the MagSafe backing, and like I was going to buy the Apple case, and people were like all the reviews say don't buy this, it's slippery. Don't buy this, it's slippery. It's the most slippery case ever. You're going to break your phone. So I'm like, all right, I guess I'm not going to buy this case. Like, why would I spend $50 for the worst protection case ever? So I got my normal spec case for it. So like, I mean, if Apple's not making the best products to protect their things, then yeah, no, I mean, like the only Apple events that are worth paying attention to are the ones that happen in the fall. The spring ones are stupid.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What do you reckon, Brian? What do you reckon, Brian?
The M1 chips are actually pretty amazing. If you've gone using Apple on their old stuff and then using the M1 chips, they're actually very fast. Like it's actually kind of impressive what they've done, but it's not something new either. Like they're basically iPad bips. Like it's something they've actually optimized for years now. So I actually think it's smart, in my opinion, that they're actually kind of getting rid of Intel because they cut out the middleman for themselves. And now they're doing their own thing. If I was Apple too, I'd probably try to cut out every middleman I possibly could. I wasn't impressed. I used to own the 27-inch iMac, the Intel one, and I actually loved it. Right now, I just have a MacBook Pro. And seeing that it was only in a 24-inch screen immediately killed every hype that there was for me. I don't understand why you would invest in an iMac when you don't have a 27-inch screen. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, if you're going to spend the money to get all of that stuff, I like a 27-inch screen. So that immediately killed the whole buzz for me. The one thing I did like was the touch keyboard thing, because I would use that, or if I can buy it separately and somehow use it with my something else, with a monitor or my Mac Mini, then I would definitely get that keyboard. Yeah, it's something I'm definitely going to keep my eye on. Typing my password gets old every time it locks. So.
Yeah, I just got fascinated. I got a little bit fascinated by the perfect Apple management team that was presented to us. So I did a little bit of digging with their background, the diversity of Apple. It's not very diverse. They all come.
I'm shocked. It's a tech company that's not very diverse.
Exactly. They all come from very expensive liberal art colleges, and then they come from very expensive business schools like Kellogg, literally all of them. And I was thinking the two found that, you know, even though the famous founder was a perfection freak, it's just interesting that the two founders of the company, I don't think they would have got through any of the interview process, you know, the automated process of filtering out candidates using artificial intelligence. They
probably not
anywhere with modern Apple at all. I find it quite fascinating, really. But I don't know if that's me, Sally.
It's an illustration of why, of how founders are not necessarily the people suited to running a company once it's
Apple
grown into a massive
now, would they?
Corporation.
If Steve tried to get employed by modern Apple, you know, some kid that couldn't complete his university course and went to India, bumming around India, and it came back, I don't think his resume would be very attractive to Apple, would it?
Oh, well, probably not, depending on who they're hiring, because, of course, people you hire to do management and corporate type jobs often have a different background from the people you hire to do the engineering, et cetera, jobs. And yet, I mean, a lot of the very famous CEO types are not the products of business school necessarily, or not initially the products of business schools. So you have to balance that tension there. My husband was impressed with the new iPad. It said that it's clear they're about to ditch the MacBook Air, because there was no reason you would buy the MacBook Air instead of the iPad. But my husband is also in the middle of rebuilding his world famous office, and one of the things he's been doing is taking his old Mac equipment, because he had a few Mac things, and installing either Windows or Linux on it.
Oh well, it's going really to the dark side, isn't it? Apple won't like that. So, Heather, do you think there's anything in what I said? Because they're very diverse in race and sex, but when you delve a bit deeper about the origins of this crew running Apple now, there doesn't seem to be any diversity in any of them. They all come from the same educational background.
Yeah, they're all from Mumbai. They're all imported from India, and they're running scared because the H-1 visas are expiring. No, yeah, I know. I mean, I know a lot of people that work at Apple, and it is.
Am I on to anything, or is it? It just seemed a slight. I'm sorry to interrupt. It just seemed a slight contradiction, didn't it? What they're trying to push, but when you delve a bit deeper, there is no diversity, really, is there?
Yeah, they're all. I mean, so okay, the executives at Apple are making a lot of money, and they're mostly male, but the majority of the workers at Apple make no money, and they're almost all contractors from India.
It's true. Yeah, that's about right.
Like just like at Facebook and Google, and like almost all of the Silicon Valley companies, the employees are contractors, and they can't even use the cafeteria.
Oh, you can't let them.
I have heard that definitely, that most of the people who are doing the work are not employees with benefits, despite the sincere attempts of the state of California to ensure that operates otherwise.
Yeah, this is 100% true from somebody that is embedded in Silicon Valley.
I mean, isn't the question that why do we allow this behavior to happen still? I mean, I see there's some signs, without being political, but like Biden, for example, making moves that he says he wants to tax the rich and so on and so forth. But like, we allow these megalithic companies to get away with practices that we all agree are not good for the bulk of society. And yet we do it because we're worshiping at the altar of the venture capitalists or the equity investors, because there's no benefit to the larger society from a place where everybody's a contractor and treated like a at-will employee slave. But yet that's how they set it up. That's how they're incentivized. That's how they make their trillions of dollars tax-free.
This is 100% of how America has always operated. Mm-hmm. It's like there's an assumption that there's going to be free labor of some kind. Yeah. Oh darn, we had to free the slaves. Now we're going to import people from China or from India to build our highways and our railroads. And we are unwilling. We have been collectively unwilling to just pay people a living wage for their work, because then we wouldn't be able to get rich.
Well, so it's a funny thing. Like, one of the people that reviewed my book pointed out, they're like, wait a second. So one of her demands for working at Evernote was that she get paid. Like, I don't understand.
No,
And
you terrible person. You
yeah,
terrible
no.
person.
And
How
You really.
dare you?
they were like, wait a second, I don't understand this. And then they went back and they're like, what? And then they actually sent me a message and asked me, they're like, wait, you mean in startups you don't get paid? And I was like, correct.
But yes, equity. It's up there. Equity in something that so far has no value. Yeah, it's up there with do it for exposure.
Yeah, I was like, if you want to be somebody that will actually make a lot of money at a startup, like if you want that chance, then you have to go in and do sweat equity. And yeah, the people that come in and get a salary at a startup are most likely never going to make any money from it, except that dollar amount. So anyway.
Sad but true.
Well, the audience are saying they love their
Which means that essentially you have to be either like already independently wealthy or young and with living with your parents in order to to work 18-hour days and not make money.
Right, which is this like why the social stratification is like, I mean, that's why you see these billionaires like continuing to make money from startups, like, and I mean that's like the lie that you think like, oh well, I can just like make a lot of money. Like the Kardashians were already rich. They were already rich. Like they didn't just come out of nowhere. So
But just to finish off, the thing that interested me, and it's linked to, I think America increasingly is adopting a Japanese model where big enterprise and government are almost unrecognizable. In Japan, the big manufacturing like Fuji Industries, Mitsubishi are enormous, and their tentacles in government are very embedded. And there was an example of Nissan when they had to get rid of their chairman and their chief lawyer. He was asked to investigate, and he did, and they didn't like the results, so they went after him as well. But he was also a foreigner as well. But to me, that it's the same situation as you asked, Sally, and I think Spencer asked, is that that big tech in America has its tentacles everywhere in the government. And so it's really hard to tell the difference between the government and big tech sometimes because they're so pally. Pelly, thank you very much.
They pal around.
But that was, yes. So we're going to go for our break, and when we come back, I've got some more stories, folks. We'll be back in a few moments. We're coming back. We've had a go of Apple, but it was a bit of it was all show and no substance in a way. But there we go. Before we go on to my next story, I want to talk about one of our other great sponsors, Conversio. Great hosting. If you've really got a large website for a client and you're having problems with your hosting provider, this is enterprise level hosting, though, folks. We're talking about a reasonably large WooCommerce website, membership website, something that is taking a lot of money or that, and you're looking for a company that's really got a superb back end, that's doing some really interesting things in the corporate WordPress hosting area. You could do a lot wrong than looking at Conversio. They're also, if you go to the WP-Tonic website, you'll find their banner all over the website. They're offering a special deal to the WP-Tonic tribe on any of their plans, and this is for the lifetime of the plan. They're offering 30% off. It is a fantastic deal. So I suggest that if you've got a website for a client that needs some real performance and you're fed up in hearing about them complaining about the performance of their website, you should go over to Conversio and try them out. Right, on to the next story. WordPress contributors propose blocking FLOC in core. So, for Brian, could you explain what this story is about first to the listeners and viewers, and then what your view of it was?
I mean, yeah, I've been following the Flock stuff a little bit. I think it's basically, easy way to put it is like Chrome's going to use machine learning to group people into these groups instead of like a cookie for individual data where they track every single person. Now they're going to group them into these big groups and say like, I want to target an ad against this group of people. In my opinion, it's the exact same thing. It's just,
well, it's just garbage. They're
yeah,
wetting their pants about. They're really wetting their pants about this, aren't they?
They're just figuring out a way to rewrite it so they can keep doing the exact same thing. Now, coming from my marketing background, though, I also have a kind of a different view of, I've used advertising and remarketing in many companies that I've worked with, and it does generate a lot of money for those companies. So there is something to be said in the power of being able to target an individual with an ad. So I see it both ways. I don't think this is something that should go into WordPress, though. I think, if there's another tool, another opt-out process, whether it's in Chrome, built into Chrome, or I think there's like DuckDuckGo released a Chrome extension that you can install to get rid of Flock now. I think that's a better way to do it. I don't think this should even be part of WordPress. I don't know why they're even going to waste time on this. I think, why not waste time making full site editing better? Not this. It's kind of one of those things Spencer touched on, where I think it's going to be one of those areas where they're trying to do all these things and nothing's ever perfect. And this is one of those things that they should just drop. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Yeah.
So,
well, and also Facebook, with what, it's linked to what, before our break, what Apple's proposing with their on their devices. Literally, Facebook are literally, going berserk because it's a knife to the heart of Facebook, isn't it? What Apple's proposing, isn't it, Brian?
yeah, no, it's the same type of thing, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next 5 years, I think, because I think people are more conscious about their data now than they ever have been before. And they're watching to see what's happening with these companies, especially with, like the GDPR stuff. That kind of phase went through. And, there's California has additional laws too for this sales stuff. So it's all these things are becoming more and more important. But I think all these big companies are they're just rewriting the laws to do the exact same thing. And I think we're probably going to end up with nothing really changed in the long run, other than maybe the people that do really care about it have maybe a few better workflows to opt out. And I don't think that should be in WordPress. I think it should be, I think they should demand that this be part of Chrome itself. Like, go further than a Chrome extension, but like make it an option in Chrome settings or something like that Chrome needs to do.
Well, I mostly use Firefox still, but if I'm really don't want to be tracked, I just use Brave, and I ramp up the preferences in Brave if I really, because if I'm using Chrome at all, I just presume I'm being tracked to death, because it's Google, isn't it?
That's another solution. I mean, to switch browsers. So like that no one's holding anybody stuck to Chrome. So like there's lots of great browsers now. Like I've used Brave too. I use Firefox. Edge is actually pretty nice to browse into. And Safari's been making actually lots of great stuff. I use Safari as my secondary browser now for all just random stuff. So
yes, I understand. Safari is actually like, recognize that it's the 21st century all of a sudden. And I saw an announcement about their grid inspector. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about putting it into WordPress. I assumed that was more meant to be a statement of, we really think this is a bad thing. Because, I don't know that, working on adding that to core would be a good use of anybody's time. But acknowledging that, this is just like, same stuff in it with a different name, is worth making the point of. Now, anybody who's tech savvy has probably heard that there are different choices of browsers. There are, private windows. There are all kinds of ways around it. The average human it probably doesn't know that much. Like, the browser is what came with your computer, and so then that is cause for paranoia and anxiety. I mean, and
I'm not been in some ways again. I'm not in some ways. I have been surprised. In some ways, I haven't. It was especially about Facebook's reaction to Apple's. They literally got banners when you go into the Facebook advert manager. They got literally banners everywhere. They're literally wetting their pants about what Apple's proposing. That literally these two, giants are really, for some reason, maybe Facebook did something to piss off old Tim. I don't know. That's the thing that surprises
well,
me.
If they didn't, he must be the only one, because Facebook's pissed all the rest of us off.
But it did something upset Apple.
Well, I mean, it's a big GDPR issue too. I mean, like, it's not just Facebook. I mean, and besides, Facebook's screwed up a whole bunch of things in the past couple of weeks. But I mean, it's a privacy issue, and it's been a problem for a while. And I'm curious what Brian thinks about all this from a marketing standpoint.
Well, and that's what I was saying. Like, as a marketer, I mean, the power of remarketing ads, like using AdRoll, is something I've used many, many times at different companies, is super powerful. And even, running Facebook ads or Twitter ads, and you can't do a lot of this stuff anymore, but like, people used to upload CSV lists into ads just to target individual people. Like, I used to be doing that stuff way back then too. Like, that's what you did as a marketer to stay ahead of the competition. And now all of this stuff is getting a lot more complicated. I'm actually kind of glad I'm not doing any advertising anymore, because now there's all these different loopholes you have to go through. Like, I think it's good and bad though, because in one way, you can't target individuals as much, which I think is good for privacy reasons. But it also makes it harder for marketers to do what they need to do. While I did PPC stuff at Kinsta, and it got harder and harder to target who I wanted to target over the years at Kinsta. So but then I also, I don't like people seeing my data either. So it's kind of one of those things where, like, I don't think there's a good solution either way for everything.
I think it's just a balance, really, isn't it, Brian? I actually, it's useful to see adverts that you're interested in, actually.
It's not especially useful to still see ads for the car you already bought 6 months later, however.
Well, that means they're not doing it the right way.
They're not doing it the right way. They need to hire Brian, don't they? There we go. What do you reckon, Spencer?
This is, in my opinion, a clear mistake and overreaching on WordPress Automatic, but it's also an example of, like, the priorities are so weird and off. I mean, they have so many things to worry about or fix or correct. Like, why, for God's sake, are they still haven't fixed accessibility? Why are they getting into trying to do the job of somebody's browser? And if they were going to do that, why are they debating not just making it a checkbox as an option instead of forcing it in as a false security threat? Like, this reminds me of so many of their other missteps. I mean, quite frankly, even if you look at Gutenberg, I mean, why is Gutenberg by default on and there's not just a checkbox as the option so that all of us have to use that plugin Classic? And by the way, They stopped counting it at 5 million because it's more like 99% of people install it. I'm sure Heather as well. And the idea is like, because somebody has this weird priority list of triaging things to work on that doesn't align with the needs of what's really broken. And this is one of, I mean, listen, somebody has to address whether people should be cohorted together, but it shouldn't be the CMS tool's job.
Not at all. You're totally spot on. Thanks for saying that. Now, let's go on to story 4. Quick take, my reaction to Apple Podcasting's big announcement. I think you found this one, Sally, didn't you? You suggested it. What did you like about this story?
Yes, one of the things that got announced at the Apple event that was not like a piece of shiny exactly was a change to the Apple podcasting platform that lets you charge money for your podcast. In an arrangement where apparently you pay $20 to get in the program. And then for the first year, they take 30%. And after that, they take 15%. But that the thing the guy was particularly excited about, because there have been ways to charge money for podcasts for a long time, was that you don't have to like worry about a custom feed URL and somehow paste it into your device. Now, after this article was written and the new version of the Apple Podcast Connect or whatever it is they call their tool launched, apparently there were a whole bunch of problems and some people's podcasts disappeared, and it was not exactly the it just works experience that people want from Apple. But I think, it's intriguing that that they're doing this, and, curious that, well, there are, some of the other people who provide those services, to see how they react, whether they still, whether they still do well. I don't know that you have to do an exclusive with Apple for these things. I haven't been looking to monetize any podcasts. But it is interesting that, and the whole question of, they're trying to convince you that if it's a free podcast, you're now going to follow it. Because, if you're going to subscribe to it, then that means you're going to pay. And I think, follow is not is just not really the right term in the way that we understand that, and we'll see whether that gets adopted at all. But it's an opportunity for people who produce podcasts to use something which is different from Patreon and the other available options.
I'm looking at Patreon for my tribe, offering more content. But I'm a bit pushed for time as it is. But there we go. Spencer, what did you think of
I'm
this?
just wondering. I'm just trying to think at what point. I mean, I know when it happened when Steve Jobs died, but like, at what point did Apple lose its compass as far as what it does best? Because, I mean, I truly have always been an Apple fanboy since the earliest days, and I still am using my 2015 PowerBook or MacBook Pro, but I can't envision
it's a good bit of kit, isn't it?
Well, because that's the last time it had all of the goodies, and the processor power is still more than enough, and it has the various connectors and a MagSafe, power cable, all the stuff you need. It's in a pack.
Yeah, by the way, that fancy iMac does not have a network port.
I have 2 or 3 old iMacs that are over 10 years old that still function, ironically, and they're 27-inch, like Brian brings up. But the point is, like, at some point, and I don't know why, they lost their moral compass. And once they lost their moral compass or their business compass, they've been going down this path of pursuing things that are all like below their dignity for what they're known for. Because it's clear that if they stuck with making incredible products that were prosumer friendly and like awesome for what they did, that everybody would spend 2, 3, 4 times normal retail value to get them. I mean, no different than any other luxury brand like Dr. Dre's Beats or, a Mercedes luxury sedan. But instead, they've gone into this weird world of, why do they have to nickel and dime podcasters to like offer podcast hosting. What is that even about? Because they already own the iPod, the Apple Store for all the electronics. They can make plenty of money on the tchotchkes that people use. So I don't really have a strong feeling about it, other than to say it just gives me like
Spencer, you didn't go to the right business school. You didn't go. You're just not on message, Spencer. This is the problem, Spencer. You're just not on message.
Well, I mean,
friend.
it's iTunes is so old that we sort of feel like it's been around forever, but it did provide a means of selling music on the internet in a way that was convenient enough that a lot of people, said, okay, yeah, I can just like pay for that song that I like, and not like, download it from a torrent somewhere and, not know if somebody attached some kind of malware to it. And one would assume they might have thought of this for podcasting like as long ago as they launched podcasting in iTunes. So, it doesn't seem like a strange offering, but also, Spencer has a point about, making sure that whatever they do is the best option.
Isn't this just like the tile example that Heather and I both noticed? It's like, why do they need to go into the business of copying tile in such a blatant way when all that's going to do is sort of make them look petty, right? Like, we expect from Apple that what their product might be with some kind of like holographic satellite-based navigational tracking device that nobody's ever seen before. But as soon as they just go knock off a product or a product that already exists, it's sort of like, really? Like, is that what you've gone to? It's like we're just putting pretty colors on other people's products and calling it Apple now, and
And Tim was so impressed with their credit card, wasn't he?
Well, you're only impressed with somebody until the curtain is pulled back, like the Wizard of Oz, right? And if you see that, the Wizard of Oz is just a dude with a machine, you're no longer impressed or willing to pay the premium. And I think many people found that for various reasons. Mine was the removing of the USB stuff and the MagSafe and the triple, quadruple cost of stuff I can't fix. That was just more than I could take, because the Intel market caught up and passed them with other options that seemed to work. And at this point, like,
they don't make a Mac that has the specs of my laptop.
Right. I'm just saying, like, everybody has their personal preference, but like,
but your Mac, editing, you can edit on a 2015 MacBook Pro just about everything under the sun, unless you're doing like Marcus Brownlee and you're doing 4K, ridiculous stuff. But for most mere mortals, in order to fit it into your normal website, it's not going to be like requiring that super duper stuff. So anyway, I just want
to point out to the listeners and viewers that Sally's laptop is a gaming machine that literally cost her about $3,000.
But it's not
$1,000 or something.
$4,000. Yes.
Sorry,
she's cooking breakfast on it while we speak.
Yeah, she is there. She's got.
It's got the most incredible fan.
Well, it heats the whole house.
She's roasting a chicken on it.
No, it doesn't get. I mean, it would get that hot, but it has these amazing fans. So, in fact, it doesn't. You just wonder if the Concorde has taken off once they kick in at full strength. But not that much actually causes the fans to need to kick in, because most of what I do is not working it very hard relative to what it's capable of.
I mean, that rotisserie attachment you got is awesome, because you can have you just do your work and then your lunch is ready by the time you're done. It's fully cooked from the heat coming off of that thing.
Yeah, well, the cats do like to sit behind the vents on the outside.
Right. Hot cats. There we go. We've got everything there. We've got hot cats. Let's wrap this up. But before we do, we're going to do our recommendations of the week from the panel. But before that, I want to talk about a webinar I'm doing with Uncle Spencer on the 14th of May. That's the second Friday of May at 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm pumped up for it. I'm going to turn it over to Spencer. Can you tell our listeners and viewers what we're going to be covering, Spencer?
Indeed. It's the second of a 3-part series. The first video is available for anybody. If you go to the link, I'll put it in the thing here. You can basically understand very quickly that with WordPress, you've now got essentially a platform, just like any other hosted platform. But many people get confused by how many choices or sticking the wrong things together. So if you're building a membership site and you follow this advice, you will be able to identify the small stack of things that matches for you. You can then, in the second webinar, learn how to configure those, like Lego blocks. And then we'll be following up with a third webinar that shows how to use that new Lego stack of plugins to launch your membership in a way that works with today's strategies. The number one thing I always point out is like, nobody wants to hear that when they give you their email, you're going to send them 65 drip emails to follow up. Instead, you want to use the website as the target, and you just use email as a way to remind people stuff's going on that's exciting. So if you're really curious how to do this in a lean, mean, modern way, watch the first video for free. Give your email so you'll get the link to the second one. I will not spam you, but we'll just keep you posted for each of the links.
That's great. So let's go on to our recommendations. And Brian, have you got a recommendation for the listeners and viewers? Or you're mute, Brian.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I think there's this new little app I've been using just for some stuff. Now, do your own research, and whether you think it's secure or not is up to you. But I don't know if anyone on here used to use Firefox Send. It was like a free tool for them just to send quick links that expire that you just want to, maybe it's just like a document or something, or it's an easier way to send something than like sharing a Google Doc or stuff like that, or you want to share a zip file quickly. I used to use Firefox Send all the time. Firefox got rid of it for some reason, which sucked. I really liked it. And
I think it might have had to do with laying off such an enormous amount of the Mozilla staff.
Yeah, I think so. Because they had expire times of like 15 days. So obviously they had lots of storage costs involved with running that tool, I'm assuming. So yeah, I'm sure it was costing them money. And there's this new one called wormhole.app. And it's basically they're trying to clone Firefox Send. But I actually think it's pretty handy. I've used it a couple times. It does, end-to-end encryption. But they're trying to make it stupid easy, like Firefox Send did. You add your zip file, you send it, it expires, you're done. Like it's a great way to send just little things here and there to people if you need. So.
Oh, sounds interesting. Thanks for that, Spencer. Well. Brian won't put that into chat, Brian, and I'll put it into Slack for you. But the rest of you, if you can put your recommendations in Slack, that helps a lot. So, Spencer, got anything you want to recommend to the listeners?
No, this is a product everybody can use, and one that if Apple was going to rip off, would actually make sense. So this is called joinslash.com. It has nothing to do with the Guns N' Roses guitar player. It is a way for you and 10 friends to create a smart virtual credit card that you can share the cost of, so you can all subscribe to those services that you want to share, like Hulu and Netflix or other websites that require subscription. So the idea is, and I don't know how long they're going to let this last, but boy, oh boy, if Apple would mainstream this is where Apple could make a quadrillion dollars for something unique. You and 10 friends essentially sign up and you get a bill, but it gives you a virtual credit card number that you use to sign up for Hulu or whatever. And then ta-da, you just go, everybody pay your share, and it manages and tracks it. And now you can all, get, because I have this problem at home, and, we all do it with our family anyway, or our girlfriends and boyfriends, husbands and wives. Like, you got 5-6 different services, Disney Plus and Netflix and Hulu and so forth. Well, now you can essentially have everybody divvy up the cost of it, as well as just, mixing and matching. So I suspect this will be either around a long time and become mainstream, or it will be killed dead with a photograph on the front page of the newspaper. Why?
I think its lifespan is rather limited, but really interesting. But I think corporate America will soon get rid of that, Spencer. There we go.
Yeah.
So, Sally, got anything you want to recommend to the listeners and viewers?
Yes. Now, okay, I confess I haven't tried this yet. I saw it on Product Hunt and was reminded of it when Spencer was talking about, the super high production values of some YouTubers and giant 4K videos. So this is called TinyVid. And what it does is it helps you compress and trim your videos for better use on the web or certain certain apps. And I am looking forward to trying it because it looks like it might actually be a video editing tool that would be simple enough for me to use. I am not good at video editing. I don't enjoy it. But now and again, people will want, can you just trim a bit of something off of here or cut that little whatever? So I have put the link into the
Slack.
into the chat and into the Slack.
Right, let's see, because it doesn't save the chat on this particular platform, which
that's a very annoying thing.
Yeah, so I should send them a ticket. We need to be able to save the chat. Heather, have you got anything you want to share with the listeners and viewers, Heather?
Yes. So I know everybody has been, or a lot of people in our community have been working from home or working remotely even before the pandemic. So as a lot of companies have been coming up with like virtual workspaces to help socialize us. I've put in a website that creates like a virtual coffee shop that people can jump into, and you can create your own little coffee shop with its own ambiance and stuff, and people can jump in and say hi, and it's completely free. You can have your own like little Spotify playlist in the background, and it just becomes your little hangout that people can jump in and jump out.
It sounds like Brian's home. Right.
I do love my Spotify.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just your own little hub that's not like a persistent Zoom room or something. So it's cute.
Yes. Right, thank you for that. I think it's been a great show. Thank you, panel, for turning up. I think we've had a great discussion. And we will be back next week around 8:30 Pacific Standard Time, that's AM, with another panel, another great discussion. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye.
Bye.